Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk podcast. I'm Carla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandy Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about
real people, real issues, and real talk. Welcome back to the Mental Perk with Carla and Brandy. Today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Nicole Plotner. She is a student at Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, Texas, and she is working towards eventually starting her PhD in pediatric psychology. We are so excited for her to come and tell us her story. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, Nicole, I want you, and your story it's just so amazing, and we're going to get into a lot of different details with this, but I want you to kind of start from the beginning. And the basis of this is you lost your dad in a very tragic way. So tell us a little bit about your story.
So I remember being in 8th grade, and every single year on my birthday, I was always so excited because my parents, we always went to my favorite restaurant growing up. And that was what I was used to. So on this specific day, it was actually my birthday, 8th grade year. And I was excited this entire day because I knew that my parents were going to come pick me up and we were going to go to my favorite restaurant. And I remember maybe after lunch, middle of the day, I get called into the office. And, you know, you can get called to the office for many of things, but it was very unusual for me. I remember thinking, you know, maybe I forgot something, you know, maybe my mom's dropping me off something. But I remember walking to the office and I could see my mom and I could see her face and I knew that something was wrong. That was my first thought. And I had no idea what it could be. Going to the office, I could see the look on the front desk lady's face, of course, but they didn't tell me anything. It was just a very quiet walk to the car. And it felt like the longest car ride of my life. I didn't even know where I was going at this point. But like I said, I just had the feeling and the sense that something was terribly wrong. And of course, we end up at the hospital. And then slowly after that, it's a little bit of a blur. But I saw my family, my dad's side of my family, and my childhood priest. So I grew up in private Catholic school my whole life, since I was in pre-K, 6 years old, all the way until I graduated high school. So our priest for our church, he was there, which was unusual for me. But of course, our priest, like I said, like he would go to if you needed him to come to your house to pray over you, if you needed him to, if you needed anything, like you would go to the priest.
And it really sounds like, and you're about to tell your whole story, but it sounds like this is where the trauma started. Mm-hmm. This is where the tragedy is.
Mm-hmm. And I think seeing him, honestly, I was like, oh my goodness, like he's here to pray over us, like something serious is going on. And I found out that my dad was in a coma and he had a heart attack and a stroke at the same time. And talking with the nurses, they came to my mom and I and they said that you really only have 6 minutes with him. You need to say your goodbyes now. And I believe they gave us a less than 1% chance that if he did survive, we're just letting you know, like, half of his body's going to be paralyzed. He's not going to be able to walk again. He's not going to be able to eat again. And I mean, just to get that, 6 minutes left,
right.
We were just like, oh my goodness. And so of course I was walked to the room and I think seeing him, the machine, seeing him in a coma, I was crying. I was in shock, did not know what to do. I mean, I'm really thinking these are now less than 4 minutes that I have with my dad. So of course I thanked him for everything that he's done in my life. I was scared. I told him, I need you. Please don't go. Please fight this. And I remember he woke up and the nurses, like the look on their face, I mean, everyone runs up. And I remember like the beeps, everyone's going crazy in here. And they're pushing him out of the room. And the nurse, I'll never forget, like she looks back on me. She's like, I think you just saved your father's life.
Wow.
Because he woke up when he heard your voice. And I was so happy. But of course, like I said, I'm scared. I'm scared. I have no idea what's going on. And then from that point forward, I mean, it was many, many months in the hospital. The rest of my 8th grade year to my transition into high school was spending many nights by his side, of course, doing homework there.
And he's still in the hospital at this point.
He's still in the hospital, and I don't know the exact timeline, but I just know it was months. And because he needed a lot of therapy. And my sister was a baby at the time. I want to say she was maybe 3 years old. So
now, how old was your father at the time all this happened?
My father was in his late 40s.
So he was very young to be having a stroke and a heart attack.
He was young, but I do remember growing up, he did have diabetes, and he always had kind of issues with his heart.
Right.
And I know before I was born, he had a heart attack scare, but we never expected something like this to happen. Of course, I know that my mom was very on top of him before with his health and how he ate, but my dad, he did not listen.
Right.
He loved his sugars.
Like most men, right?
I think
Sorry,
that's
Bradley.
true. Except he's not much of a sugar guy.
And it's so funny because, of course, later on, he would look at my mom and be like, I should have listened to you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I should have listened. And then, but yeah, I mean, it was so sad, and it was very hard for us to, watch that. We had to take turns. Of course, I was still in school. So.
And you also have a little baby sister at this point. Yeah, tell us about, that's hard too, because now your mom's not only caring for the two of you, but she's also caring for your dad. And this one of them is a little itty bitty person.
And then providing for the family.
Yeah,
there's all these things that were happening at one time in your life. How did you see this affect your mom and your little sister?
So I remember, of course, my mom, my dad was my mom's first love. And when she came, my mom is from actually Peru, another country, and she moved to the States when she was very young after she graduated college. And she worked in actually New York City for a few years, and my dad was on a business trip in New York, and they met and they fell in love. And my dad was from Oklahoma, and my mom, they did long distance, they got engaged, my mom moved down, and the rest is history.
That's beautiful.
I
love
love that.
story.
From New York to Oklahoma, God love her.
Do you have a sound for hearts? I don't know. Heart throbs? No.
Oh, that's good. The rainbow. Yes. The unicorn. Yeah.
So, oh my goodness. So this, just watching her every day was such a struggle, and being so young, like I just tried to be as there for her, of course, my dad and my sister, as much as I could be. But I remember even myself, like I would try so hard to like hide my emotions because I didn't want to look, I guess weak in a way. I wanted to be strong for my sister. I didn't want my dad to see me emotional too.
Yeah.
And at this point, your childhood is gone. You're now an adult at 14 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't realize it until later on, which I will get to because of all the emotions that I went through. I did not understand it. But, of course, by miracle, my dad was able to come home. But during this process, we had completely transformed our home. I remember specifically in his room, we had to get kind of like... I don't know specifically what they're called, but kind of like a hospital bed type of thing where it's easy for him to get in and out of and for it to elevate and things like that, and to have like his
IV,
everything.
It's like being in a hospital, but it's in your house.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, that, the shower doors off, our regular doors off. Everything was changed. Ramps, anything you can think of, you name it. So we were preparing for him to come home. And like I said, during this time, it was a lot of therapy. My mom spent a lot of time in the hospital with him. I was at school. We would take turns. So we were ready for him. We were excited for him to come home. We also had a nurse, part-time nurse that would come work with us. But ultimately, it was my mom and I. I just remember now I'm in high school. He's home. I think probably in the mornings, mostly it was my mom maybe making him breakfast, and then I was feeding my sister. And then I would go to school, go to sports, do my homework, and then at night it could be my turn. Maybe I was making him dinner, my mom was taking care of my sister. We had these roles.
So y'all were like partners now.
Yes. And you're trying to go to school, stay strong. I mean, your process at that point mentally, how were you doing at that point? Were you just not allowing yourself to really feel all of the stress of what you're going through? Was it like robotic? You were just going day to day, trying to get through the emotions of things? Tell us about how that was, because I'm sure you weren't only just stressed for what your dad was going through, the stress that was on you, but then also watching your mom and your sister. So how were you getting through all that?
So it was exactly as you said. It felt like a day-to-day to me, but I remember every day when I would get out of school, I would just have to like take a deep breath, because it hurt me so bad going home and seeing my dad like that. I mean, he was very emotional. He was very confused. He would try so hard to overcome these obstacles. I mean, not being able to drive, not being able to eat on his own. He couldn't even go to the bathroom or take a shower on his own, and that frustrated him so bad. And I think seeing him, he would never admit it, but I know that he felt a lot of guilt, because he knew that it was just my mom and I at the end that were taking care of him. And my mom, of course, I mean, even his work, he was a business owner. She had to take all of that, not knowing how to do it. Of course, my sister's a baby. So everything and above, but
And in this moment, y'all didn't have a whole lot of support. You mentioned your dad's family, they weren't very involved in his care, and your mom's family is, of course, in another country. So y'all didn't have a whole lot of help.
No, and that's one of the things that I suffered from too, is I just remember my dad's side of the family, they all kind of just dispersed, and they were not there at all. And to this day, they have never reached out to me again. And it was very hard, because I would see, I mean, growing up with my dad, of course, we would have the Christmases and the holidays, and we would always be together. And then when he got sick and he was in these issues, and my mom and I were suffering, I mean, I would see them all over my social media being together, but they never reached out to us. They were never involved.
Wow. So how did you, did you feel betrayal? Did you feel abandoned? What were you thinking at that point?
One of the biggest issues that I think grew on me growing up, at the time I just felt anger, but growing up, I suffered with abandonment. It hurt me really bad. And I remember, getting older, I would always tell my mom, like, one of my biggest goals in life is to have the biggest family that I can. Because I didn't have that. I felt like in that moment when I needed family values the most, they were not there. And, to this day, I still kind of have like a bitter heart. I just distanced myself. I haven't tried to reach out. I'm still angry.
That's still something you're processing and working through and trying to.
And that's okay. That's okay.
Absolutely.
For
It's
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
You're still very young, and this is a lot to take in. Family issues everybody has them, right? Everybody's got family issues, but when you have something like that where you just totally feel abandoned, that's a whole different issue. So now your dad they're working on getting him rehabilitated. They're working on trying to make sure he gets stronger. What's happening now?
So over the years, thankfully, he got a lot stronger. He overcame a lot of obstacles. He finally was able to semi-walk on his own. With a walker, of course, and very slowly. But
that's kind of a miracle in and of itself.
It is. Huge miracle. His left side, I believe, was the side that was paralyzed. So even being able to lift things again on his own, being able to eat on his own, he would start dancing again. Aww. He was happy. My mom and I really every day worked with him. And I honestly think because of my mom, he was able to overcome so much. She really, truly was like 24/7 by his side. Yeah. And really talking into him that, everyone says that it's like a miracle that he was able to.
What a great example of true love your mom is, right? People talk about true love, but they don't really talk about it in the way you're talking about it, but that is such an example of what true love is.
And probably how that pushed your father to be better, because he knew someone was right there that believed in him, that was going to be his fighter when he couldn't fight between mom and you. And that probably pushed him to be the best he could be, to get better.
He didn't want to leave him.
It says so much.
Oh, thank you. I know she would appreciate that so much.
It's amazing.
But
so at this point now, he's starting to try to do some things on his own. He's making some progress. And then what happens?
So now I'm older. It is my junior year in transition to my senior year. And at this point, I'm thinking everything is better. Of course, like I said, this has been my day-to-day for so many years that, of course, it's still hard for me. But I'm thinking at this point, my dad is going to be potentially in my life forever. And I think one of my biggest regrets, honestly, is I remember the day before he had called me, and he wanted me to lay down with him, and he wanted to watch a movie with me. And, you know, I've been by his side so long. We've watched so many movies. So this one specific day, one of my girlfriends, she wanted to hang out, you know, just go get lunch or dinner. And I told my dad that, you know, I was going to spend time with my friend, but I promise as soon as I get home, we're going to spend time together. We'll watch a movie, because that was like our thing. And I got back later than I thought. And the next morning I went to school and I found out he had passed away that morning. And that was something to this day that it's so emotional for me, because, and that's something every time my friends, let's say their parents call and they're like, oh, you know, my dad's calling. I'm like, you need to answer the phone.
Yeah.
You need to spend time with them.
You need to take those calls. You don't know when those moments won't be there anymore.
But also, too, think about the little miracles. It sounds like nothing, but to me, I also think, too, there's a reason why you weren't there.
I agree.
With your father.
That's a good point, Brandy.
I think sometimes that's a higher power's way of saying maybe you didn't need to see certain things that had happened to him during that process of passing. So I hate hearing that you're so hard on yourself about that, because I know you're going to think it automatically, but I also want to encourage you that maybe to think about it as a way of being a blessing.
For you to remember your dad in the way you needed to remember him.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was something that was so hard for me from that point forward. I mean, I was so angry at myself because I thought I should have just spent that time with him. That was my last moment that I had with him after all of these years. And then, of course, the confusion and anger. From that point forward, felt like, honestly, a blur to me. And when my mom started taking me to therapy, they would ask me about specific moments, and it felt weird because I just couldn't remember like specific moments in time.
But as we go into this, and we're going to talk a little bit about PTSD, that's one of the symptoms right there. You block those things out because they're so painful and the response is so intense that you just can't. So that is a symptom of PTSD.
So I did end up getting diagnosed with PTSD, and you know, before that, I was so confused, like I said, because even my mom is my absolute best friend. We're so close. I mean, we have to be. We only have each other and my sister. And I just remember being so confused because my anger a lot of the times would come out on her. And that would hurt her a lot because she didn't understand. I didn't even understand myself. And I think getting older and kind of going through and talking and figuring out what PTSD is, I think because she was the first person, like we went through this for so long together, like I don't have anybody else. I kind of just let everything out on her. I'm not going to let anything out on my little sister. We didn't really go hand in hand in what my mom and I went through.
Correct. Yeah. So y'all were kind of each other's partner. And so that was your person. And that's what we do when we're going through something. The person close to us gets the brunt of it. And that's what was happening with you and your mom. Yeah. So now at this point, so that the anger was developing, you're starting to have these symptoms. Your mom's getting you into counseling. How's it affecting you at school, your friends, your social life, and all the different things that go along with being a teenager?
So now in my senior year, I mean, my grades are just absolutely plummeting. I actually got told right before graduation from one of my school counselors that, I mean, she was just very honest with me. She was like, Nicole, your grades are absolutely going down the drain. I don't think you're going to go to any major university. You might not even get to community college at this point, because I was so behind on everything. I wasn't in the mood anymore to finish my homework. It was hard for me to study, to focus. And I mean, that absolutely broke me. I left crying. I was so upset. I went home. I mean, I was just lost at this point. And I mean, it was always my dream to go to a big university. And I mean, I obviously knew that was very realistic, because at this time, everybody's applying and they're so excited and everyone's about to go to college. And I haven't even looked at an application. I mean, at this point, like, I could care less. I didn't really know, like, meaning of what I should even be doing with my life at this point. And, you know, my mom, when she saw me so distressed, I remember she showed up to the school and she told the counselor, you know, you're going to see my daughter one day. She's going to do big things. And she really always believed in me from the beginning, even in times where I didn't even believe in myself. She's always pushed me. But thankfully, after that moment, it was very hard for me, because for some reason, I wanted to be as far away from my hometown as possible. I mean, I'm at the time where even being around friends, being in my childhood home, just the city in general, everything reminded me of what I went through. And I felt every day like I was like battling anger.
So you've been through the fight, and this is your flight. Like, you're out of here. You're like, I can't fight anymore. I need out of here. So you were running away. Yeah.
And I remember I just packed 2 luggages, and my mom and my sister took me. It was a lot, because obviously, of course, immediate reaction of my mom, she did not want me to go. We are very, very close. And my sister, of course, is still young. And I kind of had a battle, because I knew going away, there's a chance I might not ever come back. And of course, I knew I was going to visit them and everything, but I mean, this was my life for so long that I was very scared, but I knew this is what I thought I needed to do for myself, because I ultimately felt like I was suffering inside every single day. And friendships at this point, I was the type, I didn't really care to open up to anybody. I wasn't really talking to anybody about how I felt. And I mean, at this point, my friends were probably, maybe a handful. And yeah, it was hard for me to leave, but I just wanted to start over, basically, at this point.
Fresh new start, new beginnings, not reminded of the past. You think it's going to be a step forward.
So,
and I'm going to guess your story didn't end up that way. It wasn't necessarily a fresh start, was it?
No.
Because all the pain that you had from home just went with you right into Florida.
And then you're isolated. You're going to a place where you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
New setting, new beginnings. You're excited, but then you get there, and what happens?
So I get there, and I think it was about a month. I actually would record myself. I mean, I was just absolutely sobbing. Every day I was so sad. I felt lonely. I missed my family so much. But, you know, now I'm in school, and I made this decision, and I thought to myself, like, I'm just going to push forward, and I'm going to study and, of course, make my mom proud, because it took a lot for me to get to Florida, that a month later I'm just coming home. I just didn't want to show her that I couldn't do it. I wanted her to be proud of me ultimately. But
so you got a little your mom's fight in you then.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of her mom's
We're
fight.
going to thank Peru for that, right?
Yes, absolutely. So you started to I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to work my way through this.
But of course, I think I was there for about 2 to 3 years after that. And all I can think about Florida is, of course, I had my good moments. I made amazing friends, met great people, but I was very sad. I was very lonely. You were still
just kind of empty.
I was suffering, and like you said, I carried everything with me that I think it just grew even more over time. And I remember one specific day, I want to say about 2 years ago, as I was very set on ending my life that day. I was researching about it. I was looking for a way that I could go that was an easy way to go. Like, I was planning how could I do this without hurting my mom. I mean, I was really researching because I was scared, but I just wanted to end my life.
So all of this effort you put into the fight, you never dealt with the real issues. You never dealt with the pain and all the things from the PTSD and the trauma. And it was just boiling out at this point.
And it's interesting you say, and hearing you say that, but also hearing you say you just wanted to end your life. Not necessarily wanted to end your life. You just wanted to end the hurt. Is that what I'm getting off that? Because I heard you say, you know, I don't know, Carla, help me out here. When you're thinking about all these ways of ending something, but you don't want to hurt anybody, it's just you want to hurt. You want to end the hurt, not the hurt. If it was gone, you'd be okay, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, every day, like I said, it was a battle for me. I just couldn't take it anymore, and I was at the point too. I think being away from my mom, because in high school, I mean, she has the option to put me into counseling if she wants to. Now that I'm over 18, she could tell me all she wants. Go to counseling, you know, go get help here, go do that. But I didn't
You
care
were resistant. You were unmotivated.
Yes, very. Yeah. And I definitely think not having that and not caring about that just made me worse.
What made you not do this? What made you not act on it?
I honestly just think in my head I was at the point where I was over it. Like, I wish I didn't think that, because of course it led me to spiral and get into this space where I was even triple hurt than I was before when I was going. But I just remember, I don't know how I fought through that, my mind, to not end my life that day. I mean, I just kept having my mom and my sister's face in my mind.
They were your reasons to live. And that's a skill. That's a skill we use to treat suicide, is finding those reasons to live, and they were yours.
And that in itself, I mean, I would never admit, that's something that I kept just between my mom and I. I would never want anyone to know. I didn't want anyone to know that I was even thinking about this, until one day I'd open up to one very close friend of mine, and I just kind of let everything out. And from that point forward, she took me, she actually is from a very strong Christian family, and I just remember her telling me, you need to come to church with me this weekend. And like I said before, I grew up in a private Catholic school my entire life. You know, I had talked to my priest. I was very close with him. He prayed over us. He was there for my dad. But I was already at the point in my life where I felt angry with God, in a sense. I felt like, how could he take my dad from me when I felt like I was such a good person?
And y'all were fighting it. Here you were fighting this, and he still went. He still left. Yeah.
So I just felt betrayal, like you said, and that. So when she had reached out to me to go to church, I mean, I had my doubt, but I still went with her, and she put me in a Bible study group, actually, that her sister had led. And from that point forward, I mean, my life completely changed. And I was surrounded by people who, when I felt comfortable enough to share my story, before I was so scared of feeling judged. I think I was so naive in that. And when I finally opened up, like, having people just cry with me, having them there for me, support me every single day, I mean, it was like, whoa. Like, I felt like I had a family, in a sense, again.
What you just said is, and I think it's so important, is a lot of times people don't realize that just because they're not blood doesn't mean they're not family.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's your family. And it's amazing how helpful they are.
And the importance of having a strong social support system is what gets people who are suicidal through the hard times.
Yes.
And you didn't have that for such a long time because your mom was, not with you. And now here you had this big void. And so finding that allowed you to give you purpose and start working your way back and finding that fight again.
Yes. Thank you. And I mean, yeah, and from that moment, I mean, slowly every single day, I mean, just having people around me hold me accountable, push me, that's when I was like, I really need to work on myself.
Did you get counseling at this point? I know that you've now built this social support system, but did you actually go and find a counselor or a psychiatrist or someone that can help you through this?
So after I started going, I finally was open to the idea of going again. And eventually I did get a therapist who really, really helped me. I mean, I now was comfortable with opening up after all of this trauma for I don't know how many years it's been now. And from that point forward, I mean, my grades, my school, like everything I started taking so serious.
Did she help you understand the impact of post-traumatic stress disorder?
She did, and I think understanding too, because I still was confused of like my brain and how it worked and the symptoms that I had. Of course, when I was in high school, I got diagnosed, but I didn't really go through all the steps. Like I didn't
Understand it. Yeah.
And I didn't continue with my therapy.
And what we know in the United States is 5% of teens, 13 to 18, will experience some form of PTSD for various reasons. There's all kinds of reasons we get PTSD. One of them is traumatic loss or seeing a family member go through a horrific health problem. And die and things like that. Those things are reasons for PTSD and what can drive us to that point. So you had 2 of the 7 that I can list, right? So, and there's so many other ones as well. But, just getting an understanding of that this is something that's happening to you. And then knowing that I can heal from it, I can learn to manage the symptoms.
But the biggest thing is, like you said, a lot of people don't even realize they're going through it.
No,
like
they
you don't even know what PTSD is.
Right.
You have no idea. And then someone like Carla or a professional comes out and tells you, hey, you've got 2 of the 7 symptoms here.
Yeah, and the depression and anxiety goes hand in hand with it, of course, but also the PTSD can mimic different kinds of things. And so sometimes it's hard to really pinpoint what it is.
So explain that, though, because I think it's interesting. Could part of her PTSD be that she was getting angry?
Oh,
that
yeah,
she was
100%.
What are some of those things that she's explained to us that you think she went through?
This irritability and agitation, intense anger, impulsivity, aggressiveness, all of these things are part of PTSD. We also see people who can't hold relationships, because they have so many of these things. It's hard for them to reach out and get connected. There might be anxiety and depression we talked about, substance use, panic attacks and panic disorders. Did you have any of those kinds of things where you just couldn't get a breath?
Panic attacks, I remember specifically I had a very serious one in high school where my mom had to take me to the hospital.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a definite sign. And then you talked a lot about focus, concentration, and attention. And that's just it's a symptom of PTSD as well as depression, anxiety, and those things really are real. It's hard for you to narrow your thoughts down and focus on anything. So those are big signs. I mean, you're like hitting every one of them. Insomnia. Did you have trouble sleeping?
Yes.
Did you have nightmares?
Oh, yeah.
Flashbacks. You could just be sitting in class and flash back to things. Or maybe the sounds of certain dings that reminded you of the medical devices your dad was on, things of that nature.
Isolation. Is that part
isolation,
of one too? Isolation. And I heard a lot of isolation.
Yes.
And what you were saying as far as, just going through the process, moving off to Florida, the isolation. And really, honestly, it makes sense to just want to get away from things.
Yeah.
It makes sense to want to start over, but you figured out that wasn't the way to do it.
No.
That's why it's so important when people are working with kids, teens in schools to realize that kids just don't act out for no reason, or they don't use substances for no reason, or maybe this irritability and all these things could actually be something this child's going through. So we don't want to write it off to that child's just acting up or they're making those choices. Just like the counselor was like, oh, you're not going to be able to college. Well, this is a student who wasn't like that before,
I'm
right?
Thinking, why would you say that to your kid?
Big red flag, right?
Yeah,
so that's what we really want to notice is that sometimes we have to dig a little deeper and find out if there is a trauma.
Right.
So, well, tell us a little bit. So now what's happened? So now you've found this group, you're getting in touch with God, you're building your faith, you've got a support system. Where are you now?
So I'm ultimately doing better, and it feels so good. Of course, PTSD is something that I've struggled with every day, and at this point, I've kind of trying I feel like it's so sad to think about, but I was just embarrassed to be diagnosed by PTSD, and I wish that I wasn't. And now I'm honestly, I mean, that's why I'm here, is because I feel like a lot of kids, they kind of hold that in, and they're scared to talk about these things. And so from that point forward, I missed my mom so much and my sister. And growing up, my dream university was always to go to SMU, Southern Methodist University in Dallas. It's close to home, but it's a good 4-hour distance.
It's an amazing college on top of that.
It is a great college.
It's an amazing college,
Yeah.
but I remember in high school, I mean, I can think of the maybe 3 or 4 kids that actually got into SMU, and they were the smartest kids in class.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wasn't going to get accepted. I was very hard on myself in that aspect, but now I'm at the time where my mom is telling me, like, you should reapply. I think that you could get in. And she would tell me this every day, to the point that it was just annoying to me.
What a great
We
mom,
love mamas
though.
like that.
I love those kinds of moms.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, because in my head, I'm like rolling my eyes. I'm like,
She
thank
knew
you.
it too. She knew you were rolling your eyes too, just so you know.
I know. I'm like, Mom, thank you. I mean, I'm so thankful that you believe in me, but just knowing my record, I mean, my high school, my senior year, like that transcript, like I was embarrassed of that senior year transcript. And I knew that that's part of applying to a university. But, I don't know what built up the courage in me one day, because like I said, this is my dream university, but now I'm a lot older. So I'm thinking to myself, like, would they even accept me? Doesn't hurt to try. And I got in touch with the transfer department, and I was so willing on coming back that originally I even was trying to apply as a non-degree seeking student. That's how bad I wanted to get into this university, because I was like, even if they don't like my grades, I could still go as like non-degree, because my transcript wouldn't matter ultimately, because I'm not actually getting a degree at SMU, but I can enjoy, going to classes there and going back to Florida if I need to. But I just wanted to be able to say that I made it to my dream university ultimately. And I had to apply by submitting a essay. And in my essay, I included part of my story in there. And I got reached out by someone in this transfer department. And she told me, she's like, I think you should apply as a regular transfer student. And I was like, are you sure? I mean, I will, but it was like a little word of encouragement that I remember when I got off the phone. I was so excited.
Oh my gosh.
Good
that's
for
awesome.
you, SMU.
Yay. Way to go.
Seriously.
Whoever you are in that office,
helps.
you
Seriously.
did good.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
And I applied, and I got my acceptance letter 2 days before last Christmas.
Yay.
I know. And
Celebrate.
and I remember opening that letter in front of my mom and my sister. And I mean, we were all crying. We were jumping up and down. We were so excited. And my mom was like, see, I told you that you could
Mom's
do
like,
it.
I told you.
Yeah, I
If you
told
could just
you so.
listen to me. You know?
I love that. I love that.
We were so in shock, so happy. And then even now it's so funny, because my mom, like, she'll come visit me. We just had family weekend like 2 weeks ago. And she's like, I can't believe we're here. I'm so proud of you. But yeah, so from that point forward, I mean, when I was in Florida, I was doing medicine. I wanted to be a pediatrician, and I loved medicine because for so many years I felt like I was my dad's nurse. So I resonated with medicine. I mean, I loved it, and that was what I was comfortable with. And then when I came here, I got in contact with the Office of Wellbeing on campus at SMU, and the director heard my story as well. And she wanted me to work with her on what is now a group on campus that just opened called Wellbeing Education Student Team. And we work with...
AKA the Westies, right?
Yes,
Okay.
the Westies.
The Westies.
And she was just kind of building up the Westies at this point. I think they had just kind of started the year before, if I'm correct. But she really believed in me. And she told me that, she's like, I think you would be really good in pediatric psychology. And because I was so passionate about working with kids, specifically because I resonated with like my childhood self. I loved kids always, and I'm very empathetic towards kids. And that was kind of the route of being a pediatrician, doing something with kids. And with psychology, I mean, she could see that I was so passionate about it. And we would work on different projects together. We went to Washington together to work on a big petition that we were doing on campus, so many different things. And the well-being, the Westies is, I mean, we work with, I mean, it could be mental health, physical health. I mean, that could be eating disorders.
Just the well-being of the
student mental health,
population. Yeah.
Everything. And I love it. I'm passionate about it. And from that point forward, I mean, I've completely switched my degree, and I feel so happy.
You feel like you're in the right place.
Yes.
Finally. So, you know, PTSD doesn't necessarily go away easily, and it's something you're going to battle for a while, you know, because it's still pretty new for you. But the fact that you've changed from flight back to fight,
I love
it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And the work that you're doing with other students and being part of their wellness and their mental health and their physical health and doing all those things and contributing back have to be so healing for you.
Well, and the most important thing, too, is you can actually literally relate to the struggles that some of these guys are going through, which a lot of people, I think, have a hard time dealing with it because the first thing they think is, well, have you been through this? And if you've not been through it, it's hard to relate to it, but you've been there. And so, wow, you're going to be so effective with helping people.
Thank you. And one of the things, too, is, you know, when she started talking to me about psychology, I thought it was great because, I mean, SMU doesn't really have a big medical program anyway. So
they are big in psychology
and
counseling.
They are big in psychology. And in the classes, it's like I'm not only learning for my degree, I'm learning for myself every single day.
And it helps you heal.
It helps me heal.
Love it.
And all of my professors, I mean, they're psychologists, they're counselors, and they're very open on, if you need to talk to me, come after class. And I have such a good relationship. I know
what a great environment for you.
Oh, yes.
For any SMU student, really.
Yeah,
Wow.
actually, yes.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, Nicole, what's in the plans for you? Where are you going to be 5 years from now?
I hope that I am completed my PhD. I'm working as a pediatric psychologist. You know, even in the route, I just talked to actually my advisor the other day, and she's like, even if you go to counseling, I think that you would really, really succeed in it. And I think that you could help so many people. If I could go and help, you know, someone that's struggling with depression, anything. I am very, very hands-on right now on campus, and I try and kind of stick my foot in the door everywhere that I can because I'm really, really dedicated to students' overall wellness. I mean, their mental health, I think, is something, unfortunately, that I wish is talked about more. I think that, I mean, I can't remember. I mean, I think COVID, unfortunately, and social media, I really don't know. But I feel like since then, I mean, everyone I meet, I feel like, is like struggling with anxiety. Or
I think both of those played a big part into your generation in ways that many people don't understand. But we're going to be seeing that unfold, and we're going to see more research around that, and it's going to show that your generation was highly affected by those
and I think
things.
that there's pros and cons to it. The cons is what everybody's going through, but the pro is you guys are making everybody aware of what it's done.
Yeah.
And that's what's causing us to
You're raising
discuss
a lot
mental
of
health.
awareness to mental health.
You guys are going to be the pushing force to making sure we address the epidemic in this world with mental health issues.
Absolutely. Nicole, you are a beautiful young woman, and we are
Yes.
so
Thank
glad that you
you.
are here, and just the amazing story that you just told us and where you've come from. So we wish you all the best. We know there's big things for you ahead, and we would love to have you back here to tell us more updates as you continue down this process.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right. If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to talk to someone you trust. Get connected to a mental health professional who can help you find ways to cope and ultimately feel better. If you are having suicidal or self-harm thoughts or thoughts of hurting another person, please go to the nearest ER, call 911, or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you for tuning in to Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you're worthy. We're in this together.